How's it going, everybody? We're Mr. Bepic and DJ TJ with the Collegiate Exclusive Podcast, and today this is kind of a special edition of the podcast for us because in partnership with College Esports News, we're going to be going over pretty much every notable roster change in the top kind of 50-ish of the Collegiate Rocket League scene. So, TJ, I hope you're ready to be talking rosters because this might take a while.
Oh, we got more than enough to go through. And starting at the top is already a lot to go. But, I'm going to let you pick where we start first because over 50%, I think actually over 60% of our top 15 has changed in some degree. Not to mention the top 30 gets a little crazier down there. So I'll let you go ahead and pick where to start.
If some of you watching right now aren't used to our podcast style, TJ and I are live pretty much every week or so on our Twitch channels with the Collegiate Exclusive Podcast, talking roster moves, talking results, talking stuff outside of Collegiate Rocket League as well. Let's put my spreadsheet up on the screen. Love our spreadsheets here. And yeah, let's just go alphabetical. I've kind of sorted all of these teams into 4 echelons of talent within the top 48, top 50-ish. So right off the bat, the first 3 teams we're looking at, I think Akron and Ball State are actually pretty good starting points for us, TJ, because they're both in the same boat of bringing a B team player from last semester up to the A team to play alongside a couple of longer standing duos. So we'll start with Akron because Emilio is finally getting his call up to the A team after filling in for him in a bunch of different tournaments.
Yeah, Emilio is somebody who constantly has been, I think, viewed as a second fiddle in the Akron program. I mean, even way back when we're talking Patty, Bullseye, Emilio had his fair share. He had his moments, but kind of, I think, lost a lot of the luster on that Akron roster because of how quick players like Bullseye and Patty progressed, specifically way back, even with Tristan when they made RLCS. I think that was a big turning point. So Emilio has kind of just been on the gold roster, has been grinding it out, has continued to show he's been the best player on that roster. And now he finally deserves this spot. Yeah. But also to swap out Patty, we talked about this on the podcast. There's a huge kind of play style change I'm expecting with both those rosters, but I'll save a lot of that conversation for when we get down to Akron Gold.
I mean, I feel like we can talk about them in the same sort of breath because I think this is a move right now on paper that will improve both teams as the season goes along. I think Akron Gold might see more of an improvement right off the bat, although it'll take some time to adjust to losing Emilio and his well-rounded, especially defensive prowess that helped elevate this team in high stress situations like their LAN runs that they had last semester at BBB and at DreamHack Atlanta. And so now that he's bringing that up to the A team, we got to see kind of where Patty fits in. And we got to see an eye test with this team when they played on my stream last week against Syracuse. It was 4-1 in favor of Syracuse, but Akron Gold looked pretty good. I think some of that chemistry of just the Akron program having a lot of play time across their A and B teams together was showing. The passing plays were pretty clean, and they found ways to do well against that Syracuse defense. And so I think Akron is well suited for a move like this just because of how deep a program they are.
Oh, and they have always continued to have 2 talented and very solid rosters that can go to LANs, that can go to online events and be in the same divisions, be in the same tier, be in the same conversation. So, I mean, I'll add on to my conversation about the playstyle parts. It's mainly Patty. I have no idea where Patty's kind of dedication or skill must be at right now because Ball State, before that they made a roster move this semester, they almost made one last semester, bringing Wova down to the B team. And I think that there's a very similar conversation to have between what Akron and Ball State are doing within their programs. When it comes to Akron and Patty, though, Patty has always been one of the more wild card, kind of big question mark players, not in a bad way, but as to every single game, you don't know what he's going to bring to the field. And it's always going to be some form of surprise, whether it's mechanical, whether it's consistency, I should say. I really don't know what he brings, but I think when you pair him up with somebody as solid as Jan and somebody who's also an upcoming wild card in Oxy, I'm excited to see how Akron Gold gets to work. And as for the Akron main team, I mean, Emilio just needs to play his role, throw a dash of mechanics in there. Doesn't need to be as crazy as 5-up. Doesn't need to be as backline consistent as Bullseye. He can fit right in the middle. And I really like how both these rosters are going to pan out. But there's a lot of question marks as to the new add-ons.
A lot of question marks all across the board with a lot of these changes. And we weren't expecting a roster mania like this with about half of the top 40 teams in CRL making changes. But Ball State, we touched on as well. They bring Phoebes up to the A team. They bump Wova down to the B team. I think they're for similar reasons, with Wova not being able to put in quite as many hours as he used to, and Phoebes being a hungry young player, and he's already gotten reps in with the A team as well. They played some events, some lands together last semester, and so I think Phoebes, Oath, and Ga right off the bat are going to start finding similar levels of success and then continue to develop as the semester goes on. And so that brings Wova down to already the second best B team in the CRL space, playing on that Ball State Black team with Ultor and Yags. And on the spreadsheet, I like that you added that Fish got signed, because that's our Alabama high school star. Yep. That's our boy right there. Signed for the fall, we playing in the spring. But Ball State's making moves, man.
Yeah, I had to add Fish because, I mean, like you just mentioned, that's our dog. That's definitely one of me and you both have worked a lot. He is our Fish. But, we work a lot in the high school spaces of our individual states. And to see somebody come out of that skill tree and make it to a big program, a D1 program at that, shout out to Maction. I'm really excited for Fish to get to work with BK and that whole team. But now I will also add, with Ball State Black, you lose Variety, who was originally in contention to take Wova's spot on the A team. So Variety has graduated, I believe, which now means that that's a big piece. That's somebody who you were potentially going to replace Wova with last semester. And now, even with him leaving, they still go through and they bring Wova down. But I think Phoebes is a really good replacement as well. Now, granted, same boat as Patty. I don't know if Wova isn't as committed or isn't on top of his game, or just because he's on the way out this semester, if they want to go ahead and get reps starting this spring. I don't know what the thought process is over on the Ball State side, but I have personal experience playing with Phoebes. Phoebes is funny, he is charismatic, and he is absurdly talented. He slots right in with what a D1 Rocket League player should look like. And Oath and Ga are LCS level talents for years. Ultra consistent. For a young player, these are dream teammates to have. And I'm very excited to see how Phoebes gets to go to work.
Well, now let's move on, because we got a lot of these to talk about. But one of the biggest kind of domino effects of the off season, and it starts at the top with Baylor, who stormed onto the scene over the summer, signing Andy and Hoxter in their first semester as a program, as a varsity program at this big D1 school with good backing. And in their first semester, they did okay with JT. I think better than anyone was expecting. Shout out the two-time Collegiate Exclusive Player of the Week, JT, and elevating Baylor. But now Andy and Hoxter have their guy, and Zanil has transferred from Northwood, who finished third in the fall semester of CRL. And he's playing with his RLCS teammates at Baylor. And while they've been kind of up and down so far in the RLCS, I think this team is still going to be immensely scary. And we'll talk about each individual move, but the ramifications of this are Zanil goes to Baylor, leaving Northwood, who will recruit aggressively to then fill his position with Drewing, who they found from Michigan State, who have bumped Knock back up from the B team of Michigan State into his starting position from last year before Drewy transferred in the fall. So kind of a three-team domino effect right there, and it really benefits Baylor.
And I could argue there's a further domino effect in the fact that there are so many programs and schools who recruited two very strong players and then struggled to find a third over this past summer. And Baylor was the biggest name. Them and Maryville both struggled to find a third who could actually be here and show up and compete. So for Baylor, now we finally get to see this roster at full strength.
Yep.
It is also worth mentioning that I believe right now in RLCS, it is Andy Hoxter and Zanil. They have played the last few events together. They did just get eliminated in day 2 of Open 3. Do what you will with that information. Growing pains for the Bears, I believe. And when it comes to CRL, still going to be a very dominant team, as there's only 2 teams in CRL who actually play together as an RLCS unit. And we'll get to the other one kind of in a bit, because they're going to be more dangerous the way it stands right now. But Zanil was the best player on Northwood this past year. Also one of the newer recruits to Northwood, which means he's got a lot of years left. Andy and Hawks are brand new to Baylor as well. Yep. This is an investment that's going to last this Baylor team for the next 2 to 3 years. And I can see a championship in this team's future. But from what we've seen on the pro level and within the CRL level, they got a little bit to figure out before we get there.
And I think Northwood's going to be in a similar boat, trying to figure things out with Drewy, because losing Zanil, you're losing one of the sharpest tips of your attacking spear in the CRL scenes. Zanil's on-ball ability is second to very few in CRL. And now Drewy comes in alongside Creams and Hockey, whose play styles are pretty well known for wearing you down. That's how North would like to play. They wear you down. And with Drewy coming in, I feel like that emboldens that style even more. They have to continue to play consistent Rocket League. And when they're not locked in, that was an issue in the fall. They lost some series when they weren't completely focused and playing their consistent style of Rocket League. And so Drewy coming in, I think they're still going to be in the top 8, but they've got some things to figure out.
And in terms of where you start, I'm not sure. But as we keep moving down the list, there's 2 rosters who didn't make any moves at all before we talk about Cumberland. Both Concord and Davenport made absolutely no moves going between semesters. Now, granted, I believe personally, based on what I've heard, that both of these schools are going to be looking to make moves next fall. I think that, they're big on the culture around their teams and their units, and they don't want to change that. Concord also has an extreme track record at LAN with this roster, and it seems like that most of these schools don't want to shell the money to send their rosters to LANs. So I think Concord will continue to keep this roster, let them win a few more LANs, and then we'll keep a close eye on how they do. Davenport have always been right on the outside looking in. Now with a whole year as a unit together, because I believe Bolte got moved 2 semesters ago. We'll see how Davenport shapes out. But now let's address one of the many elephants in the room. We do not have a confirmation on why Nex is not starting on the Cumberland roster, but while we were doing our episode this past week, we were told that Hotshot from the B team is coming to step in.
Yeah, and this is significant because Nex played a really important X Factor role in this Cumberland lineup last semester. And yeah, I talked to Hotshot about it. We were talking to several people close with him during the episode last week. A benefit of watching our podcast live. We get some info from Twitch chat pretty frequently. And so Hotshot filling in, he's got big shoes to fill with Polar and Nightya remaining consistent. These are still very good players, and I expect this team to still find success. But whether it's success akin to what they saw in the fall, where they were in the first split of CRL and then were just on the outside looking in for the second split of it, I think they're really going to have to work to get back to this point. And the way Hotshot phrased this move as well is that he doesn't think it's a permanent change just yet. So we could see Nex come back. We could see Hotshot keep the spots. There's a lot of uncertainty at Cumberland right now, and so they might lose out on one of their positions up towards the top of CRL.
I mean, Claypool, the Cumberland director, runs a very tight ship over at Cumberland. So the fact that there has been no conversation or public word up until one of the players talked with us directly, I think that goes to show that there's some form of internal dialogue going on between either Polar and Nex, both coming together over from EU, or who knows. But somebody is having some sort of dilemma with somebody else, whether it's on the academy team or the A team. So I think this is a tryout period for Cumberland. Granted, they still probably have about a week, maybe half of it, before they really need to lock these rosters down to fully compete in all of their leagues. But they're also not in any CC this year, so they get maybe a little more time, because I don't know what the roster rules are for PCL and ECAC, but I know for NACE, which is coming up very soon, they're gonna have to lock those rosters in. But I mean, look, of all the players that come off the academy team, Hotshot grinds the most. Hotshot seemed to step up the most, and I think he's got the most potential out of that roster right now. He's also one of the younger players out of all the Cumberland recruits. So it's a good move if he does stick, but he does have a very long way to go compared to where Nex is, even at his lowest. Nex is still a top level player in CRL, and so Hotshot's got a really long way to go. But again, if anybody in the Cumberland program is next up this year, I think Hotshot can do it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to fill the shoes of one of the bigger European invaders of CRL. There have been a lot in the last couple of years. Yeah, I mean, a lot of on-ball ability coming out of Europe. And I think Fisher, who's next up in our list to talk about, they are the prime example of the most recent European invasion. Justice is returning to the starting lineup. He spent a semester in Europe and is now back with the team in the States. And they've brought in Ivan as well, who's found some success in European and Sub-Saharan African regionals. And so they're playing alongside Royales, who with a bit of a lesser team last semester really lifted that team up by its bootstraps and carried it to some, I think, results that weren't expected of them after a rough start. So now that he's got the players that he was expecting to play with, at least that caliber, I think this Fisher team is going to be extremely good.
Yeah, this is a partnered segment, so I'm not going to say much about that team of last semester. But what I will say is that Fisher needed to get Royale some help. And again, this is one of those schools who made a big signing, but then couldn't back the rest of it and couldn't fill a team. So now you get to bring Justice back. You find Ivan kind of needle in a haystack out of nowhere, who I didn't realize had any interest in playing CRL. Sign him, and now Fisher just like that. This is a team that, playstyle wise, if you can mix Sam and European playstyle with two players with an extensive high-level RLCS history, this team can get dangerous, and they can put goals up on you quick. Yeah. I think out of all of the new roster moves, there's obviously the Baylor and the Maryville moves, and don't get me wrong, we'll talk in plenty of detail about Maryville as well. But outside of that, in terms of teams who could break into that top 8, maybe even higher than that, this Fisher team is one good coach away from doing it, and it's Coach Stolen, one of my personal homies and somebody who I've worked with very closely in the past. We coached Cash Cup together this past season. I love that guy to death. He's a legend, and he's got a Sam backing play style that he's been coaching his entire career. Him, Royales, Justin, Ivan, I expect big things out of them.
Yeah, I think in the CRL, the last couple of years, coaches have become pretty important. I mean, if you want to look at probably the highest profile transfer of fall to spring, it is Maryville. It's that Arju to Maryville from St. Clair after they just won 2 consecutive semesters of CRL championships. And he's now playing with his RLCS teammate, Speed and Relating Wave. But Shuffleverse came over from St. Clair with Arju and is now at Maryville with these boys. And I think that was another massive transfer because Shuffle brings a lot to his teams. And honestly, I should add him as player 4 in this spreadsheet because that's how much influence he brings to this Maryville team that he had at St. Clair, who have big shoes to fill, both with Arju departing and Shuffleverse leaving as well.
Well, and these guys have been grinding together for all of this past RLCS season, and they had a very, very decent stint. Shuffle, Wave, Speed, and Arju were all under Team Evo, I believe, last RLCS season. Almost made it to a major. They were 1 or 2 spots away. Now this season, they've had a little bit more of a struggle. In Open 1, they went top 8, losing to Shopify, and then they went top 16, losing to FUT in Open 2. So 2 very tough losses for a team that is very, very talented and is full of all European transfers. Again, bringing that European playstyle over North America, which has been very successful in CRL. I mean, look what St. Clair with Arju just did this last semester, right? So now you get kind of the best of the best from St. Clair, and you get the best that Maryville brought over, and probably 2, in terms of a duo, easily a top 3 European duo or even North American duo in CRL right now. And you can argue around, is Andy and Hoxer better? Is Crispy and CMOS better? I'll say Crispy and CMOS has got the number 1 spot, but in terms of the rest, Wave and Speed can make an argument when they're at their best, and Arju is a demon.
Okay, but the Zai and Jazzy duo has now won 2 consecutive CRL championships. And yes, they've lost Arju, who was their best player. But replacing him with Vesh, that is a pretty solid fill, I think, on paper at the start. And we'll have to see what happens with this St. Clair team. But man, is Vesh coming into play alongside of one of the most exciting duos in CRL. Zai and Jazzy have made a name for themselves in CRL this last year.
Zai has also gotten a slew of ways better than he was even a year ago and even 2 years ago. I work with him extremely close during RLCS. I coach with his team right now. We were 100x35, now we're Lotus 8. Love this kid to death. He is funny. Again, I'm going to repeat myself from what I was talking about earlier with Phoebes.
Okay.
He is funny, he is charismatic, but he is a top talent. Phoebes is great, but Phoebes is not a top-level player in North America. Zai is unironically becoming one of those players in front of our eyes, and I think he can kind of, I don't want to say he can fill Arju's footsteps or fill his boots just yet, because I don't believe that they're going to follow that play style. I think it's going to be Zai and Jazzy having to play similar roles instead of letting Arju do a lot of the heavy lifting on the front end. More so, and we talked about this on the podcast, I don't know where Vesh's ceiling is. From a floor standpoint, Vesh is an incredible player, not worried about St. Clair dropping out of the top 8 per se, dropping maybe even out of the top 6. I think this roster could show up on day 1 and beat Northwood. I'll say that right now. But I don't know where Vesh fits into the play style yet. We'll have to see.
We'll figure that out as we go along. That's the case with a lot of these teams, since a lot of them have made roster moves. West Virginia as well was a top 5 or 6 at the end of the semester, top 5 or 6 team, at the end of the fall semester. And they've just, I think, upgraded. Tool graduates or is getting close to graduating. I forget if it was last semester or this semester is his final one. But S5 Cosmic is their new big recruit. And under Coach Angel, Gyro Matter and S5 Cosmic, I think, are a scary team.
Well, absolutely. And you need somebody with on-ball presence at a national and maybe even at international level. Cosmic is an incredible ones player, played extremely well in the RLCS ones events, and also has done well in pro events throughout his entire career. But also Gyro, an RLCS talent. And this is no hate to Gyro. This is just kind of my playstyle predictions. Gyro is not dangerous on the ball within CRL as it stands right now. Now, in RLCS, he's got a pretty good team and a pretty good run with Unreal Nightmare. Not going to hate on that. But when it comes to CRL, firsthand from last year, I didn't see Gyro look confident on the ball. Matter has always been a wild card in a Patty style where he'll step up out of nowhere or he'll play very consistent. Not worried about Matter at all. Cosmic, on the other hand, brings a new level to this team that I don't think that Tool was able to bring. Again, West Virginia has always signed consistent players. Matter, Angel, Tool, consistent players, but we're talking about trailblazers, we're talking about game changers. Cosmic is one of them.
And even though this is a video kind of about roster change, I think as well, we will real quick glance over the teams that have stayed consistent from last semester, because Indiana Tech, Oklahoma Christian, and Winthrop are all three in that conversation. Winthrop being the runners-up in CRL Fall 2025, Oklahoma Christian being in both splits of CRL, and Indiana Tech being one of the most exciting teams to watch that was kind of outside that top 8, top 10 range of CRL last semester. And so they all have a good bit of experience playing with each other now. Two of those 3 teams have a semester under their belt. Oklahoma Christian a lot more than just one semester under their belt together, but they'll all be threats. And if you want to hear us talk about them, just come listen to the podcast, because I'm sure we'll chat more about them in future episodes. But this being a roster mania video, let's keep on with the mania, because Bruton Parker made an unexpected change. They swapped a B team player and an A team player, both with the A-team experiences as teammates at certain points in Bruton Parker's history, but Antics has gotten the call up from the Bruton Parker Academy squad after he was moved down there last semester, and so now it's Milk, Cass, and Antics, with Manny leading the charge at Bruton Parker JV. And this is a curious one, TJ, and it hasn't worked out very well so far with their poor performance in the NECC Division 1 promotional tournament.
Which I'll let you talk about those game results in 2 seconds. I just want to add in some insider trading info on this Bruton Parker side of things. And we talked about it on the podcast. Again, we're going to keep plugging it because we talk about so much on the show. Go watch the show. But in terms of, I'll restate what we brought up with some slight new things as well. So first off, and this is new, so if you're watching this video, you get new information. Antics was taken off of the Bruton Parker main team, mainly due to his commitment to the game of Rocket League. Not to Bruton Parker, but to the game of Rocket League. He wasn't putting in a whole lot of hours, wasn't really in a space to want to put in a lot of hours, as is much of high-level CRL right now. Most are doing it for RLCS and really not much else. So Antics was originally kind of taking a step back, and then all of a sudden, we see in terms of the NECC sign-up, or not any, or yes, sorry, it was the NECC sign-ups, that Manny was dropped down. And from what I understand from Bruton Parker, and I'm not going to name the source just for the sake of the video, but I was told that it was a internal vote within the program that brought Manny down to Academy and bumped Antics up to the main team. So Bruton Parker, as in the main team, wanted Antics and decided to move Manny down. Now, on that note, personally, I don't believe it's a good move. I don't believe that Antics brings kind of that not only team leadership, but also that on-the-ball presence and kind of wild card, rambunctious manner that Manny brings, not to mention his volume at lands. Like, these are things that I've known Bruton Parker to be every time they step into a venue, and it feels like a lot of that identity has to be reshaped. I'm not saying that Milk and Cass can't find a way to replace that, but Antics and Manny are polar opposites when I think of their play styles.
And this is probably a move that we could talk about for the entire kind of 30 minutes that this segment should be. And so I'll save my opinions on it. But in the NECC promotional tournament this past Wednesday, they did lose to Carthage in Game 5 in a qualification match. And they lost to Cleveland State in 4 games in a best of 5, also in a qualification match. And they also beat Carthage in 5 previously in that tournament. But these are not losses that we saw from Bruton Parker last semester. So they've got some improvements to make, but we'll keep moving along here. This was another move that we learned about live last week, as Columbia College have added a new player to their lineup. In place of Excelst, Kazi is being brought in. He's listed as Rank X on his Twitter profile. I don't know a ton about this kid other than he is 18 Rank X, and Gusky and Rylite are pretty excited to have him in their ranks, because Columbia College was one of those teams that kind of didn't achieve what we expected out of them. They didn't have a ton of opportunities to, but when they did have opportunities, they didn't get the wins we expected out of them. But Kazi could bring this team back up into the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of high-level young stars in our scene, Rhyolite was that 2 years ago, whenever he was kind of starting out, and then now he's found his way transferring to Columbia with veteran Columbia member Gusky. Also, do not get Kazi confused with Kamikaze, who is the current coach at Syracuse. Don't make the error that we did live on the podcast. Yeah. But Kazi, like you mentioned, young, an incredible talent, and now it is Unk and Gusky and 2 young stars. Very excited to see what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of individual talent on this team now. You got the veteran leadership with Gusky, Rhyolite, who is stellar to watch on the ball, and Kazi, who we'll get to learn a lot about this semester. They are playing in PCL, where they won't get a ton of big matches in PCL. I think WCTC is going to be their only real test, but we'll learn about this team when the opportunities pop up. But moving right along to ETSU, a team that made some waves with their new French duo of Leo and Kasai, playing with Landon last semester before Landon graduated. Shout out Landon for making it into the real world. But Adrift, the 4th man of ETSU from the fall, is taking Landon's spot, and I think this is a team that is going to take a hit in results early on as they integrate Adrift into the lineup, but I think they've got a pretty high ceiling if Adrift is able to fit in with the already established French duo of Leo and Kasai.
And we still have a lot to talk about, so I'm not going to harp on it too much, but I view this roster move as much as I view the Bruton Parker roster move. I don't believe, and granted, this was a forced roster move, so I can't sit here and hate on it, because Adrift is all that ETSU have left. But in terms of performance, I think it's going to be a pretty rough awakening for these next few months for ETSU. Now, granted, Leo and Kasai have only gotten hotter as they've continued to play together over here in the States, and especially over on the ETSU side of things. They've only continued to look better. But when I look at Landon's play style, when I look at Adrift's play style, it is once again night and day. Also, I think the big thing that a lot of people are going to question on Adrift's side, and I hope this is motivational to Adrift, because I want to see that guy succeed. A really nice dude. But it's all going to be about recency bias. Landon recently has been a very talented player, has been a very high-level player, has been rank A level, has had RLCS achievements. Adrift used to be an extremely talented player. Not to say he isn't anymore. I hope he's grinding, and I'm sure he'll show up. But used to have all these accomplishments. And now, over the last few years, was the sub and kind of helping on the coaching side for this ETSU roster. Yeah. So he's got a lot of now, what can you do? And granted, again, if you're a new player coming into the state of CRL right now, Leo and Kasai are probably 2 of some of the better teammates you can ask for. They've been a duo for a long time. They performed very well in EU RLCS, the 2 Frenchmen did. So there's a lot of questions here on what can Adrift do as of 2026. And I wish him nothing but success, even though I sound very negative. I do want to see this program succeed.
That's the great thing about covering CRL is a lot of these guys and a lot of these teams are very nice. We love our community, and it is difficult to be negative about moves, even if we might think that it doesn't work out in the short term, in the long term, whatever it might be. But we'll see with ETSU. Lubbock Christian is next up on our list here, and they finally got their guy. Was supposed to arrive last fall, and due to reasons we don't know, it didn't end up working out. So Beastie took a second to get to LCU, and and we don't know who the official starting 3 are going to be. They could run a 4-man lineup with the leagues that they're playing in, the tournaments that they're playing in. But Beastie, a pretty decently touted English RLCS player, has some decent results in EU, and so he's joining that lineup of Schmack, Nasirium, and Process, who were decent last semester, not great, had some rough results, didn't get any big wins, and so I think he's going to bring this team back into relevance.
Absolutely. It's never been a mechanical issue with LCU. It's always been a mental and a game style and game planning issue for LCU. They have a slew of players who have been rank AX. I'm pretty sure actually all 4 have been rank X at some point. I don't know about Process, but I'm going to hold on that for now. Either way, 4 extremely talented players, Schmacked, Process, and Sirium got a lot of experience together. Schmacked and Process have been at LCU for a while now, so LCU need to make a move, need to sign somebody big. You get Beastie, who I think comes onto this roster as day one as most likely the best player on this roster. So anytime you can completely shake up things and bring in anybody better than your current 3, it's going to do wonders. Now, will LCU punch all the way up to top 8? That's a stretch right now.
Yeah.
Top 12 I think is a stretch right now. I think if they can consistently find their way into the top 16 and keep their floor there, then we can start having those conversations of, are they going to upset an ETSU? Are they going to upset a new look Columbia? Can they even handle the 2 best B teams in all of CRL in Akron Gold and Ball State Black? There's a lot of questions that LCU struggled to answer last semester, but with Beastie, I think it brings those questions back into the fray here in February.
Yeah, I mean, CRL is so stacked. I mean, we're 25 teams down the list, and we're still kind of discussing squads that are punching into the top 20 range pretty consistently and trading results with those teams. Like Michigan State still going to be a threat with Knock taking Drewey's place after Drewey took his place last semester. And then you've got squads like Ole Miss, Syracuse, Wichita State, George Mason, Kennesaw State, Boise that are sticking together and building on what they found in the fall semester. But we're talking roster changes. WCTC in that top 32 conversation. They lost Gio, who was their standout mechanical on-ball player last semester, but they're replacing him with Dimitri, who Ty is super high on. He's been playing with this guy in the RLCS. They placed top 33 in a qualifier. Apparently, Neeks and Dimitri have several years of experience as a duo in ranked, and so this is a good signing for WCTC that I was worried we weren't going to see this semester after they lost Gio, but they should be all right. We're just waiting on some results to come in with this new trio.
Well, and a lot of people will hear your point about Neeks and Dimitri being rank grinders, and they'll immediately press the snooze button on that. But if you guys have sat down and looked at this WCTC roster, they are not ranked players. They are not ranked grinders. They live in ranked queues together. So there's very rare cases where you can look at people who play ranked together in 3s and be like, that's a good use of your time. WCTC does it an overly absurd amount of times, which means they probably have seen every living player around them under the sun and above and below them. So I think WCTC should be one of the more prepared teams. Dimitri is also somebody that I have seen in ranked, somebody who I've seen compete in RLCS. Also, I trust Ty and Neeks. These kids are incredible. They are funny. I'm going to keep repeating myself because I love these guys to death. We met them at DreamHack. Awesome dudes. Yeah. Gio was also is a great guy. He's just not with WCTC anymore. Yeah, he's doing all right. But I do think that Dimitri is a add-on. I would maybe go as far to argue, and me and Ty had some jokes about this on the podcast. I would go as far to argue that Dimitri could step in on day one and be the best player on this roster. But again, with these B+ rank A kind of border-ish level players, you never know what to expect whenever they hit the competitive scene or whenever they hit CRL especially. So again, out of all of maybe the 16 to 32, maybe the 20 to 32 range will be a little bit more conservative. This is a big asterisk kind of exciting roster. A whole lot of upside, but also because there's no big top level rank A, rank X, there's a lot of question marks in terms of what's their ceiling. I do think it's high. I just don't know how high.
All right, well, we were supposed to keep this under a 30-minute recording. We're at 35 minutes right now, which I think is very befitting of our podcast because we do that on stream pretty frequently, go over with our discussions. So we'll kind of run through the last couple here. But Florida Southern adding K-Frost alongside the younger, less experienced player in Utility and an Astro who was an RLCS standout several years ago. That's a big move for Florida Southern. St. Clair Gold Gold add Fabzo, who was listed as the A-team sub last semester to play alongside Fatal Leaf and Barrist, and they've already qualified for the NECC's Division 1 in that tournament I referenced earlier. And then Mount Aloysius, we need to see, I think, the eye test with this team. Pigby and Skippy are great players. Skippy is RLCS level talent. Don't know much about Lock RL, but I think that change could be significant. So those are our final three, TJ, and anyone looking can see which team stuck together to know what their rosters are. But I think Florida Southern, we could see jump into the rankings. Not quite yet with the results they've posted, but St. Clair Gold we definitely will see in the rankings.
I think Fatal really just needs specific play styles around him to succeed, because he is an incredible player and he's been 18 level in my opinion for a while. He is very mechanical. I think he just needs to find some midfield and defensive presence in the teammates around him, and he's going to be a-okay. Also, I know we're running over time, so I'm going to give you a very quick speed run on rosters that we did not mention that also you need to look out for. Okay. First off, Missouri, we don't have information on. We don't know if they're playing. St. Edwards still keep Nolly and Wellis, but did not find a third. We do not know where they are going to be. Now, here are your rosters who also did not make moves, but are going to be really fun to watch. Maryland had one of their best semesters ever as a program, especially within Rocket League. Cozy P is incredible. Watch out for the Terrapins. San Diego State, they've already qualified for CECC. They represent the West Coast. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Now, you want to talk about some sleeper rosters. Cleveland State find their way into D1. Lobo, Orbo, Cipricate have been on this roster for a while. I believe Orbo was the sub for a little bit before. I can't remember the verse or the guy who left. I cannot remember his name. I apologize. Yes, thank you. So they've all been together for a while, so they're not going to drop a step. Already found their way into a top level tier. They're going to get some really good competition. And then at the very top of kind of the sleeper rosters, Leslie, great semester, have to piece a few things together to break out into the top 16 or top 20 consistently. And all freshmen, great point. And then finally, Syracuse and Ole Miss. Stealth is incredible. He's only gotten better. C-Money, though, not sure where he plays into everything, but Lunar, one of the better players in terms of this entire kind of region. Syracuse, probably the hottest roster in the top 32 coming out of last semester. Very excited to see how they continue to grow. And those guys are grinders. Hashtag Passion University.
Hashtag orange as well. Yeah, those guys are very fun to watch. So if you want more discussion about these rosters that stuck together and the ones that changed and ones that we didn't even talk about because we didn't have the time to, that's just how deep CRL goes. And that's how much we talk about on the Collegiate Exclusive Podcast. So shout out to College Esports News for setting up this collaboration. We're trying to keep you informed just like they're trying to keep you informed. So if you want to follow the podcast, we are on Twitter at COL Exclusive Pod. We post pretty frequently on there. We're also on Spotify, and I upload our VODs to my YouTube channel at Mr. Bepic. So follow us, follow College Esports News, just support Collegiate Esports in general. We need all the fans we can get right now. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you when we see you.